This March, another company is going to be coming out with a brand new video game console to take on the other three.
Google.
Google?
Google.
Google.
Hot take.
A little while ago, we talked about the concept of Google releasing a video game console, and y'all called us crazy. Now it looks like it's going to be real.
Yeah, according to, plenty of news sources, because the invitations went out today. At GDC 2019, Google has a keynote. You don't have a keynote at the Game Developers Conference unless you're talking about video games.
Now, there is a chance that Google is going to be releasing a whole bunch of video games and publishing them, but I doubt that's happening. Maybe. But what is most likely going to happen, according to the rumors that are going around right now, is that they're going to be releasing a brand new video game console that not only is a video game console, but it is a streaming platform all in the same go.
Yes, and we've had little hints of Google dabbling with video game streaming recently. They had Project Stream, which was a little beta program that they used for a bit there. You could play Assassin's Creed Odyssey for a short period of time towards the end of 2018 and into 2019, and you could play it in 1080p and at 60 frames per second, as long as you had a good connection.
Yes.
And I actually heard pretty good things.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were saying, hey, why are they working on this streaming thing?
Now you know.
Well, yeah, some people were assuming, they're going to sell this tech to some other company, and then Google will make money. No, it's pretty obvious they're going to be integrating this into a streaming platform.
Yes.
And yeah, we're going to be hearing about that very soon.
So where did all of these rumors originate from?
All these rumors originated from, so this goes back, like the bulk of the heavier rumors originated GDC last year and E3 last year. So there was a lot of behind closed doors talks that Google was having with different developers and publishers. And so we're kind of thinking that Google could be developing games or possibly buying up developers to develop games for the platform, which would be smart.
Yeah,
because you don't make a console and then say, here it is, it's the greatest console ever, it runs everything, it's fantastic. I don't know what games we have for it, though.
See, that's
you
the
need
problem.
games.
You really do. Now, we have heard that Google, over the past couple of years, has been hiring aggressively for people in the video game industry.
That's right.
So we know of just a few people. First off, there's Phil Harrison. Now, this is probably the most important hire they have. If you don't know who Phil Harrison was, he was one of the head people over at Sony back with the PlayStation 3 and onto the PlayStation 4 and stuff like that.
He had some time at Xbox as well. He dabbled with Microsoft. And they also hired Richard Marks, who worked mostly with VR with Sony. So
PlayStation Move, PlayStation VR.
Yeah, PlayStation VR. They're grabbing up people that did more of the social elements for both the for PlayStation. We heard about PlayStation Home. They grabbed up someone, and then also some folks that had worked on some Xbox Live.
Yeah, one of the creators of Xbox Arcade.
Yeah.
So that whole concept, that's who they've brought over. They've brought people largely that seem to be focusing on the digital and hardware end of things, which I think is a smart move.
Yes.
But, like we just mentioned, if you're going to be making a video game console, you need to get game developers involved. And unfortunately, as far as we're aware, we haven't heard any rumors that any game developers have been making games on this platform specifically.
All we know is that there have been little good behind closed doors talks, and that isn't too impressive. Whatever they show off at GDC, it has to show off the software. One thing that I want to see besides the software, I know the hardware is not the most important thing, but we need to know how we're controlling these games. So, we're hearing that the streaming platform can be streamed to a console or possibly to like a Chromecast device, or even possibly within a Google Chrome browser as well.
Yes.
That's fine. And if the tech works, great. I still think there would have to be a bit of wizardry there to be able to stream games like for the bulk of people in the United States and Canada, but there has to be a controller with this thing. They have to say, this is the Google controller, and it's amazing. You want it right now.
Now, basically, there's a couple of ways that this would work. For a controller specifically, folks, you need to be thinking about the way the games are made right now. The bulk of games that are released on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, well, those controllers pretty much have the same kind of features, and the same thing goes with the Switch. There are motion controls and little weird things like in eating invisible Subway sandwiches with your Switch controller. That's
a necessity for controllers. Nintendo set a pretty high bar now that everyone's catching up with.
But the idea is that you need to have a couple of buttons. You need to have a couple of joysticks. There's things that you need to have that makes the majority of games work on the platform. So they can't really stray too far away from that, and they can't be radically different with the way they actually make the system and they make that controller. Now, the console itself can relatively be cheap because all it needs to do is just stream a signal from a server. So you could get a Google Chromecast device, which they actually have those, and they're fairly cheap, like under $100, if not less, usually.
So I'm even wondering, Shane, like, why do we need a box? Why can't it just be some sort of app that's downloaded? Like, so maybe there is something going on within that box, maybe to help people that are having issues with streaming things. So maybe you can download partially part of a game onto a box and then stream the rest of it.
You could do something like that.
Yeah.
So for smart TVs out there, you have the ability to download programs and games and all that fun stuff. But traditionally, how people actually stream stuff on these platforms or on their TVs is that what people have been doing is they've been getting like little Chromecast sticks or little like tiny streaming devices, and either the device itself has a built-in system that you control, or you, in the case of the Google Chromecast device, you actually use a cell phone to connect to it, and you control the device through your cell phone. Now, this means that you're probably going to need a cell phone on top of that device, and I think adding additional devices, including a controller, will make it a little bit too complex. So making something very simple that just plugs up to your TV, that is just easy to use and connects immediately with a controller, is very important.
Yes.
I do not believe, and if this happens, folks, it's just not going to be a popular device, and it's going to bomb, and everyone's going to laugh at Google from afar. There's no way that they release a video game console that uses a cell phone as a controller.
What?
No one would want
Everyone
that.
has one. Don't you have a cell phone?
Yeah, but I don't want to play games with it. Could you imagine?
Take that, Blizzard.
Could you imagine playing any of the major hardcore games you have right in your collection right now? Anything.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, the first thing that comes to my mind is like anything from Call of Duty. Could you imagine playing that with your cell phone? It would be a nightmare. And I know that there are some games that have been released, like Fortnite, that have cell phone variations of games, and that's fine, and people play them, and they can enjoy them. But those are tailored experiences with different things, and no matter what, pair it with a mouse and keyboard or pair it with a controller, you're going to have a far better experience than using a touchscreen.
Yeah, if you have a home console that comes with a controller and then a Chromecast that doesn't, part of segmenting the audience with the controllers and the cell phones is just a pretty terrible idea. If you're doing matchmaking in multiplayer games, and then some people have cell phones, some people have these really cool pro-style controllers, and they would just get steamrolled, I would assume.
Now, interesting thing though, if you're going to be streaming games off of a service like this, it's actually going to be taking place server-side. What is the delay going to be in those kind of games? Because technically, if you're playing a game that's unique to the platform, they should all be on the exact same server, meaning they should have a fairly fast connection.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to dabble with, like, does Google have, like, just these islands of server farms, these whole, like, cities that are, because we have yet to see a streaming platform for video games as a whole that's worked very, very well.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had Sony kind of dabble with PlayStation Now. We were talking about OnLive earlier, and things have been problematic. So if there's one company that has a lot of money to invest in tech that could possibly bring us a cool streaming service, it's Google. But historically, we haven't seen that yet. So whatever they do at GDC and forward, whatever they're showing us, they have a lot of convincing to do.
Yeah. For those of you that don't remember OnLive, basically it was a very neat service. I used to use it quite a bit.
It's ahead of its time, right?
It really was. So the concept was you had an app or a program or an OnLive box. Believe it or not, at one point, if you bought one of the Deus Ex games, I think it was
Invisible War?
No.
The new one?
The new one, Human Revolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say, it doesn't go back that far, does it?
No. But whatever it was, you bought this Deus Ex game, and when you did, they would actually ship you the console for free with the controller. That's how desperate they were to get these in people's houses. So one of the problems they had with that was because their contemporaries at the time were releasing video game consoles that were a lot more expensive because they weren't giving them for free, but when you bought the games, you had a disc. We're now in a time where people are comfortable having digital copies of games on their systems. But we also have a point in time right now where people don't have the best internet connections around, so that is also a concern. OnLive did a lot of things right, and it was a very stable system. A lot of the games I played on there worked really well, and I was really shocked with the way the games were performing. But it did feel very ahead of its time. It felt like they didn't understand the market well enough, and they fell because of that.
Yeah, and they got scooped up, and then they got kind of messed around with, and then Sony kind of picked up the scraps.
Yep,
and they picked up.
And then Sony
Sony
now has their own streaming
PlayStation
service.
Now, and people are talking about how the service leaves a bit to be desired.
Yeah. Streaming games is hard.
Yeah.
Here's something that I think many people don't really acknowledge. Now, we talked about this a while ago when we were talking about Nintendo possibly streaming games and how that would be a useless idea. So, if you were to stream an Atari 2600 game, an NES game, a Super Nintendo game, it wouldn't make any sense to do that because the actual size of those games is so small that you're better off just literally having a downloadable package sent directly to the consumer and it stays on their system and then they just play it at that time. Even if they were to play it again, you'd be streaming more data at them that you simply don't need to stream.
Yeah.
It basically works like this. Anything from, let's say, SNES downwards, you're looking at game sizes that are around the 2 to 3 megabyte size. They're not really that big.
They're fairly small.
Yeah, and honestly, even that's a lot bigger than some of those games are. When you get to NES or Atari games, you're getting really, really small. That actual download, I mean, seriously, why would you ever need to stream that? It doesn't make any sense. And when you get into the more newer games that we're dealing with right now that have much bigger file sizes, if you look at Nintendo and the way that they do their games, their games are compressed and so defined. I mean, an NES or a Nintendo game right now is so perfectly designed for the Switch that it is coming in at such a small file size that the amount of data you'd actually be getting from that, you would probably have an hour of high definition or Ultra HD 4K streaming coming out from Netflix. So honestly,
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense from the consumer's perspective because if you have data caps, you don't want to be eating up your data, and it doesn't make sense from the folks broadcasting from their servers because it's a load on those servers as well. Yeah, we need to take. Again, we haven't seen what Google has up its sleeve, but we're taking baby steps right now, and it feels like the right way to go. Like Nintendo's dabbling a little here or there. We're hearing about Microsoft kind of taking their games and creating services and slowly dabbling. Streaming isn't quite there yet, but we are getting digital downloads. The next step up is going to be streaming, but I don't believe we're 2 years, 3 years away from that. I believe it's more like a decade.
I believe so.
That we'll see that.
There's this idea that making games streamable is going to have the same effect that movies had streaming them on Netflix and services like that.
Not the same thing.
Yeah, because video games are not the same idea. Now, a long series on Netflix, let's just say something that's like 12 episodes, you're watching 12 hours of content. A video game can last significantly longer than that, depending on what it is, or if you're playing it online a lot, and then that can become a whole problem itself. What if not only do you have the issue of starting up the game because you can't connect to their servers, but internally their servers are having issues as well? Sure. You cause problem after problem, and you have another gate upon another gate. Plus the idea that, look, let's be fair here. If you're going to go and play a video game, you have the hardware in your house. Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo no longer need to care about you being able to run the game from a server. But if they have a whole bunch of servers, and I don't know how many they're going to have set up for this, that are all dedicated to running individual instances of games, that's going to be taxing.
Yeah, it starts to make you think, like, okay, so Netflix, you're streaming films, and a film is what it is. It's that file being played on your TV. But when you think about on the server side for these games that are running, games require different components from computers, and they run differently. And not only that, it could be bottlenecking the experience, but people are controlling them, and there's just so much more processing going on over there.
Really is.
Whatever Google's looking into, it has to be some sort of like perfectly running I just imagine Mother Brain from Metroid hooked up to a bunch of huge game consoles streaming out some stuff to the world.
I don't know. I just don't look. I trust Google to an extent because I've seen them do amazing things. It's just realistically
they buy amazing
things. I don't see this actually working out. A streaming system from Google specifically makes no sense when you consider that unless they've got some exclusive games coming to their platform.
They have to.
You're competing against Sony, you're competing against Microsoft, and you're competing against Nintendo, and people are not buying these devices just to hold them in their houses. They're buying them to play specific games.
Here's something I was thinking about, and it could be a smart approach for them, but I again, we don't know exactly what they're going to be coming out with. But Google is YouTube.
Yeah.
So if they somehow were able to integrate in, I mean, YouTube is a service a lot of people go to for their gaming content. If somehow they were able to incorporate whatever this Project Yeti is into YouTube, hey, maybe you're watching your favorite online personality talk about a game, and then you can click a button on the side, and then you're playing that game like almost immediately through the streaming service. That'd be really compelling. But that's like crazy super future tech. We used to get demos like that for a very short period of time that were like stream demos, right? Where you could just like click on them.
But I don't think that works.
No, I know. Like, that's like me trying to think about some of the what could come from this, right? Like, I'm trying to think of this from the approach that Google has the ability to do things other companies don't.
Yes.
Right? So I'm trying to envision like what other sort of aspects of gaming that they could,
I just, honestly, the biggest problem, and we're seeing this with a lot of streaming services right now. We know that Apple is going to introduce a movie streaming service. We know that Disney is going to be introducing one. And all these companies are doing this, and they don't really care too much about the streaming service itself. What they care about is actually the content that they own. Disney owns a bunch of content. Apple's trying to make their own unique content. Netflix owns a bunch of content. And the concept of the next generation or the next couple of years is going to be content battles and content wars with all these people trying to own a whole bunch of chunk of things people want to watch and play. Video games can go the exact same route, but I don't think Google is going to be the one that does it because they're not the ones that already have that established base. Yeah. Look, even though we've seen Microsoft that has had years and years and years of experience in the video game industry, and they're struggling right now with their platform. Yeah. Do you really think Google can just walk in and go, here's some games that we made, enjoy? Yeah. Like, I don't think it's going to happen.
It's great to bring that up because, like, Microsoft, many people might be saying, well, Microsoft was able to dig into the console universe with the Xbox, but this wasn't their first, like, major foray into gaming. Microsoft had been dabbling with gaming for a very long time.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, they were working on like a DirectX on Windows. In fact, Windows 95, one of its biggest structures was DirectX to get people gaming on the Windows platform rather than gaming on DOS. So there were huge movements there that really changed the way that people gamed. Microsoft has had their hands there. Right. Even making hardware back then and video game controllers, they've really been around for a while. It's just, geez, look, Google has made other platforms. We've seen Daydream and Google VR and stuff like that, and those platforms failed to really grab anyone's attention, and there were supposed to be games that were involved with those platforms, and nothing really came to fruition. You've got some key people here that are really important, like Phil Harrison, who could drive this and make it work, but they need to make games themselves, and I don't know what a Google-produced and developed game would look like.
We have to wait and see what's going to happen at GDC because it seems like they got something up their sleeve. They're not. I really hope they're not just going to be like, this is it. This is the box. Yeah. Bring all your titles here. It'll be fine.
I'll say it now.
We already have. We have PC and we have several consoles that run games beautifully. We don't need another. We're not ready for a streaming box. I'll tell you that much.
Like if that's the thing, like one of the competitors will just do it themselves really quick. So here's how this is going to work in my head. My bold prediction for March. If they announce a system that just streams games and nothing else, and they don't introduce any titles themselves, it's going to bomb. It's going to bomb fast, and no one's going to care about it unless the hardware is doing something crazy amazing or they're giving it away for free. The other thing that they could be doing is that they might actually have a bunch of game developers that they're purchasing, that they're actually corralling, and they're going to make a big straight attack to make sure that they have a big video game system and a platform that everyone cares about.
That would be the smart way to go about things. Absolutely. Well, let's hope that all those rumors about GDC from before and E3 are true, that they were talking to different developers and they've been just cooking things for years now, hopefully.
Yeah. But we'll see what happens. Folks, what do you believe? Do you think Google has a chance to make a brand new video game platform that's going to basically survive?
Do you want a streaming gaming service? Do you think we're ready for that?
Or do you think maybe it's just not going to happen at all? Let us know what you think.